Hello there, folks. I'm the Lon Chaney Reviewer, and welcome to Silent Film Saturday, episode number 36. Also, the final episode of this second season. Next week will be a new season, starting with episode 37. More on that later. Today, I'm going to be talking about an exceptional silent film. A film that I've never seen before, and you have to see it. And even if you have seen it, you should probably revisit it. That film, my friends, is called The Big Parade. Let's take a look at this new package provided by Warner Brothers. There is a DVD edition that exists. This is the Blu-ray edition that's sold as a digipack, or as I like to call it, a Blu-ray book. But the book part is not available on the DVD. So really, I think a pretty decent enough cover. I like the font. There's like a kind of, you can't really see it, but the kind of has this weird look to it, and I like it. Spine. You got the book part, and then you have the cast list on the back end. There's usually like a piece of paper covering this, but I just took it off. Usually I don't do that. But anyhow, here's the disc. And this is a 64-page thing from Kevin Brownlow, excuse me. Kevin Brownlow. You might not be able to see it that clearly, but there's a really cool information here. Also, there are some special features, including a audio commentary track by Jeffrey Vance, featuring some archival interviews with King Vidor, the director of this film. And there's a trailer, not a whole lot in terms of those kind of supplements, but the film itself is amazing, so it's worth that alone. It's worth the film alone. It's one of those packages. Anyhow, the film is a World War I story. It's about a young man, played by John Gilbert, who is an idle rich kid. He's got a great life, got this girl that he's known forever, he's engaged to. He's rich, doesn't have a care in the world, and then war comes, and he's like, what's the deal with that? Why does that bother? Why should I do that? And through a series of events, he decides to enlist in the U.S. Army. And this shocks his parents, and makes them proud of their typically idle son. And one of the really things that I really liked about this film was that it wasn't as cliche as you would have expected it to be. Meaning, the film almost would have been about him being a rich kid in the army, when really there's only like a few gags in the first hour about that. Doesn't really happen too often, which I have to respect them, because it would have been so easy just to fall into that story. And I'm glad it wasn't just something I predicted. There is a different story there where he's just a young man out in war. Yeah, sure, he's a rich guy, but they don't make it the biggest deal in the world that he was a rich kid. Another part of the film that is also important is Melisande, played by Renee Odore, who has made appearances on Silent Film Saturday, including Mr. Wu and The Blackbird. This is her third appearance on Silent Film Saturday. She plays the French girl Melisande, like I said, and she's the main love interest for the film. She really breaks your heart. She's just so beautiful. She's so pure and innocent. I think I'll get to this scene later, but there's a certain scene that I think that she just plays it so brilliantly. But obviously there's the gum scene where he's showing her how to chew gum. And there's a lot of charming scenes where she's like wrapping up his boot, wrapping up his shoes and little things like that. Jim also has two companion buddies, Bull and Slim. These characters they're comedy relief, but at the same time you like them enough to the point where you don't want to see anything bad happen to them. So that's good. Another thing I thought with this film is that it does take a while to get to the war segments, but once it gets to the war segments, it feels like a completely different film. The first hour and some change, like 15, 20 minutes, yeah, there's some funny bits and there's some serious moments, but there's some comedy in there, some romantic stuff. And when you get to the second half of the film, it's literally like kicking you in the teeth every second. They're just some masterfully directed sequences, and I have to give a lot of that credit to King Vidor. He really wanted this film to be a memorable masterpiece. He didn't want it just to be a film that played for 2 weeks and that's it. He wanted this to be a masterpiece. He wanted it to be remembered, and it shall be remembered. And one of the scenes is where they're in the forest and there's a marksman picking them off. And it's just so well done. It doesn't cut to the guy that gets shot. It's just there's people getting shot behind them, and they just keep going. And there's just a lot of really just tense scenes like that. And there's where they have the bombs, the machine guns. Man, it's just one thing after another, just breakneck in terms of like the tension. And wow, man, that was even with a silent movie, man, that was exceptional. Even if it wasn't a silent movie, it would still be amazing. In comparison, I'm just talking about in comparison to other scenes of today, it still works rather well in my opinion. Another interesting thing I like to say about the film is that the film uses color tinting and black and white. I don't know if the film print was initially just tinted or if it was just black and white. I'm not sure. I haven't listened to the commentary track in full because I've been a very busy human being this week, but it really didn't bother me. Maybe in the first chunk of the movie, I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? But then, as the film went on, they use it very well, especially in the scenes out during the war. My favorite scene in the movie has to be one of my all-time favorite scenes in any silent film, is where the John Gilbert character of Jim receives a letter from his fiancée back home, and he's just completely distraught because he's in love with this French girl. The French girl comes around, all charming, and such, and she comes to that realization too, that's the person coming home, and then he gets called out to war. They're actually going to do fighting, and that was just such an effective scene. Not many title cards used at all. It was a beautifully, masterfully done, masterfully choreographed, masterfully edited, masterfully performed sequence. The only thing I said really bothered me with this film was there were maybe one or two too many comedic scenes, but I think they're justified at the same time because when you get to the second half of the film, it's brutal, man. Whoa, it's harsh. Also, the way they end the film, there's something that happens that I never expected to happen, especially when you have a name like John Gilbert in the film. And when that happened, I applauded MGM because it's like, wow, they let that happen. That's amazing. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but it happens in the film, and I say to myself, that's interesting. That is really interesting. Feels so fresh in dealing with the tragedies of the First World War, which was an interesting war because they had this technology that could keep people alive, and maybe not for the better sometimes. But all I can say is if you want a romance, if you want a dramatic war piece, if you want great performances, some comedy, check this film out. I highly recommend it. This might go down as one of the best discoveries I've ever made on Silent Film Saturday. I am so glad I bought this Blu-ray. And you should be glad that I'm telling you to buy this on DVD or Blu-ray. I usually don't like to say things like that, but you should see this film. See it in a nice presentation. Oh, and I forgot the Carl Davis score. Carl Davis uses some, familiar war tunes. You're in the army now, you're over there, all of these classic war tunes, but he makes them feel like they work so well into the film, like they were always meant to be there. And he is so good at doing the thrilling sequences as well, with the bombs and the guns, that it's just, all in all, one of the most perfect silent film scores ever. I would buy that as a CD. I mean, I have, sorry I'm taking up time, but I have his soundtrack to City Lights, which is the Chaplin score, but it's conducted by him. And then I have, of course, two of his other CDs, Napoleon and The Phantom. So I'm a big Carl Davis fan. And he actually follows me on Twitter. His Twitter account actually follows me, so that's really cool. But yeah, see The Big Parade. Just see it. I'm going to watch it again pretty soon and check it out once again because this film is an absolute masterpiece. Next week on Silent Film Saturday, I shall be talking about the revolutionary film by Georges Méliès, A Trip to the Moon, as voted by the fans, you guys. I'll see you next week.